Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and my condolences to all of you on the Arbaeen of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This is our Arbaeen special event, which was not fully planned out, but alhamdulillah, we have our event with our esteemed Shaykh Muzaffar Hyder, directly from
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and my condolences to all of you.
If Shaykh is here, we'll get right into the Majalis, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Brilliant. If I could ask everybody to recite the Surah Fatiha for the Honorable Marhumeen, all of the Marhumeen, and especially the Marhumeen of Mehdi Bhai, our honorable guest, our host, and for Azhar Bhai, his brother-in-law. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. عجل الله تعالى فرج الشريف. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. I'd like to ask everybody here and everybody online to give a loud and boisterous salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wherever you are. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is Ghayrah, the combating the plague of feminism. Okay, now before we begin, we're going to have to define some terms. First of all, Ghayrah, what is it? Ghayrah has been defined and it's been translated in lots of different ways. One of them is honor, possessiveness, jealousy, chivalry. We're going to go through these translations and try to understand this beautiful Islamic concept. But before we get there, we have to explain one thing. The idea of feminism being a plague. Many of us, alhamdulillah, will have awoken to the reality of feminism being a bad thing, that it has had a detrimental effect on the society, that it has harmed many relationships out there. But many of us out there are still not aware. They will ask the question, is feminism actually a bad thing? They don't know yet. So we're going to explain that, inshallah, if you bear with us. We're going to explain how feminism has really been a detrimental force in the society globally. But now, Ghayrah, what is it? I'd like to introduce the idea of Ghayrah through a little kind of story. It's an experience that I'm sure everybody has gone through. Imagine if you're being told off, or try and remember a time when you were younger, you were being told off by somebody, right? They were really furious with you. You'd done something bad and they were furious with you. They were telling you off. They were shouting at your face. And at that time, you felt a horrible feeling inside, a feeling and a temptation to burst out laughing. Have you felt that? I've definitely felt that. And at that point where you let out that laughter, when your uncle or your auntie or your mom or your dad is telling you off, you let out that laugh, and what did they say? They say, you are Ghayrah, right? The people in the Indo-Pak community will understand this a little bit more. When they call you Ghayrah, it's because you have lacked a quintessential feeling of shame. You don't have that feeling of shame. You've done something terrible, and instead of feeling shameful about it, you're laughing. And so they'll refer to you as Ghayrah, which means you don't have ghayrat. You don't have a feeling of honor. Okay, so Ghayrah, just generally speaking, it is this sense of honor that we feel inside ourselves. It's this sense of shame that if our properties or something of ours is disrespected in any way, we won't just not care about it. No, we will feel this feeling like my dignity has been hurt. Okay, that's kind of what Ghayrah is. Right? But now we're going to be talking about Ghayrah in a very specific context. And we're going to be talking about Ghayrah in the context of a man having Ghayrah for his spouse, for his wife, for his women, okay? Now, the first idea, honor. All right, honor is that feeling that you get inside where if you are disrespected in any way, you will feel a sense of like your pride has been hurt. Now, imagine if you're walking down the street with your wife, right? You're walking down the street with your missus, okay? And you see this guy or this group of guys looking at your wife. They're looking at your wife with ill intentions, right? Do you feel a cringing feeling inside? Like, that doesn't make me feel good. That makes me feel angry. You want to go and fight those guys? Okay. The question I want to pose here is, are you supposed to feel that way? I'll give you another example. You're out somewhere with your sister, with your mother, right? And somebody reaches out to hold your sister or your mother's hand, to shake their hand, for instance. Does that make you feel like, that makes me feel irked inside? I feel cringy inside. I don't want this to happen. Do you have that feeling? That feeling, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, is Ghayrah. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, the Holy Prophet has said, surely Ghayrah is from faith. Ghayrah is a sign of your iman. The reason we have to spell this out is because, unfortunately, society, particularly in the West, but all over the world, has become such that we even question, men have started to question, is that feeling a right feeling to have? And I'm telling you today, I'm reassuring you, dear brothers and sisters, brothers particularly, you should have that feeling, and that feeling is a sign of your iman. Now, the possessiveness, because Ghayrah is often translated as a jealous kind of possessiveness. You feel a feeling of possessiveness over your wife, over your women, okay? This feeling is a good thing. And Islam has actually stipulated certain parameters for us to follow, which we won't ever understand unless we look at it through the lens of Ghayrah. You see, Ghayrah is there to solve the problems of both men and women in society, okay? For instance, Islam, the jurisprudence of Islam has told us that a woman is not allowed, it is haram for her to leave the house without her husband's permission, right? Now, many people might look at this and they might think, well, this sounds like a dictatorship. This sounds oppressive. The woman should have the right to go out wherever she frees. This is against freedom, etc. If you are feeling these kinds of sentiments, it is because you've been infected by the plague of feminism, right? This is not our fitra, our divine nature speaking here. It is feminism which has been created by other than Allah, and it's infected our minds. That's why we think in this way. What does the Quran say in this regard? Think about it for a moment. It says, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. It says, turn your face to the upright religion. And it says that It is the fitrah, the divine innate nature upon which man has been created, humankind has been created. There is no changing in that fitrah, in that creation. That is the divine religion, but most people do not know. Okay, what is the fitrah? The fitrah, try and think of it like this. It is a compass inside every human being which always points towards Allah. It always points towards the truth. Society has taught us to cover up that undeniable reality which exists in all of us. You see, in the Hawza, in Aqaid, they taught us certain ways to identify things which are part of the fitrah. One of the ways is it doesn't change. It's always been there. Throughout humanity, throughout history, there are certain things, principles that are inside us which have always been there. Go back in time now, think about this. There is a video online, and I'd urge everybody to go and find it and look at it because it is astonishing. It's a video of England, and it's showing, it's over 100, it's a century ago, right? And it's black and white footage which they recovered from the archives. And you can see in there, all of the women who are walking down the street, they are all, even though they're Christians, all of them, every single one of them is wearing hijab. Have you seen this video? Absolutely astonishing video. Every one of those Christian women is wearing hijab in the streets of England, right? In a major city. Why? It's because the people, the men of that time, they still had their ghayrah intact. They still had a sense of honor. They still felt that cringy feeling. They didn't want their women to be looked at by others in the streets. What has happened in the space of just 100 so years that the society has completely changed? We're going to discuss that in a moment. But going back to the verse, it says, turn your face to Deen Hanifa, the upright religion. The word Hanifa has been used in another place in the Quran to describe the religion of Prophet Ibrahim, the father of monotheism. Now, what did Prophet Ibrahim, how was his ghayrah? How did he treat his wife? If you go to the ahadith, I believe it's in Hayat al-Qulub, you'll see that it says it like this. He used to carry his wife in the streets whenever they were traveling somewhere. He used to carry her in a box. And when you read that, it's like, what? A box? That sounds really strange. A box? We can't do that. That doesn't even sound like the divine fitrah, right? That sounds very strange. That's because it's lost in translation. You see, the box that it's referring to is actually a kind of carriage. For those of us who have seen the Mukhtar series, who's seen the Mukhtar series, right? You look at the Mukhtar series, remember the woman, she's being kept in this kind of carriage, which is on top of the camel, right? Also, if you haven't seen the Mukhtar series, who's seen Gladiator? Look at the movie Gladiator. You'll notice that the Princess of Rome, she's carried in a carriage. Why? The question is why? It's because the men of those eras, they had this sense of ghayrah. They didn't want their women to be seen by others while they're traveling. Okay. Now, going back to Prophet Ibrahim, the prophet, the father of monotheism, the great Prophet Ibrahim, he had that level of ghayrah that he didn't want anybody to look at his wife in a wrong way. Okay. I have to point out here, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, this is not to be confused and taken to another extreme where people think, women should not be seen at all or functionable in society. That's not what we're saying. No, hijab actually is the beautiful concept in Islam which enables women to be active members in society. Okay, we're not saying to lock women up in a cupboard, no, but we are saying that this sense of ghayrah needs to be there. Another hadith shows us that when Ibrahim was traveling with his wife, it was at an era where they used to go through checkpoints, just like in today's time, we see that there are checkpoints in Palestine, right? And the people are oppressed and they have to stop at checkpoints and the guards, the Zionist guards, will stop them. Back in Ibrahim's time, it was the same thing. They used to be stopped and persecuted in this way. And at one point, the ahadith teach us that one of these Taghuti guards reaches for the wife of Prophet Ibrahim to touch her in an evil way, right? His intention changed. Prophet Ibrahim feels this feeling of cringe. He hates this idea and he wants it to stop. As we know, prophets had wilayat taqweeniyah and the man's hand froze. Then he withdrew his hand and he thought maybe it was just my imagination. He tries to touch the wife of Ibrahim again and his hand freezes again. Okay, the point I want us to focus on here is Prophet Ibrahim had this sense of ghayrah. He didn't want his wife to be touched by another man. Okay, now Imam Ali alayhi salam, one of the beautiful ahadith that we have in this regard, he said, ghayrah, the ghayrah of a believer is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you might read this hadith and just glance over it and think, oh, okay, it's interesting. But hey, no, wait a moment, think about it. This is something divine, dear brothers and sisters. The man's ghayrah, the believer's ghayrah, this feeling of cringing inside, if you have it, you should thank Allah because He's the one who's given it to you. And trust me, as we're going to discuss in a moment, it's disappeared from society to a lesser or greater extent, right? Now, let's go to this idea of jealousy. There is a point that I have to make here. I'm sure that a lot of people won't like this point, but we have to point it out. So far, we've been talking about ghayrah in the context of a man. Men should feel ghayrah. Men should feel this jealous possessiveness. Why are we not saying it in regards to women? Although it does exist in society. Well, we have a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says that ghayrah for a man is a sign of iman, whereas ghayrah for a woman is a sign of kufr. Okay, so I don't want to dwell on this idea too much, but the point here is that, look, this feeling, this emotion has to be there prevalently and predominantly in men. The brothers need to feel this sense of honor, this sense of pride, this sense of jealous possessiveness. We'll come back to that. Jealousy, it's been removed from us. Let's go to society. Look what's happened, particularly in Western society, but it exists, unfortunately, in societies globally. Look at the number of harassments that have taken place against women. The amount of women whose honor has been snatched away from them. Look at the divorce rates, right? Look at the illicit content available online, unfortunately. Look at the premarital relations that are taking place, and it's just completely normal. Completely normalized premarital relations. I remember, and these are all surface level things, I remember seeing a pregnant woman on a train, pregnant woman, she's standing there. All the seats are taken and all of these men are sitting there. Not one of these men stands up to give this woman a seat. What has happened to society, particularly Western society? I remember being afraid, dear brothers and sisters, being afraid to open a door for a lady, right? In case she might turn around and say, I can open my own door. Who do you think you are? You patriarch, right? This is what feminism has done to society. But remember, the enemies are very good at presenting something absolutely evil, but presenting it and clothing it in something that sounds beautiful. So they'll present it as advocacy for equal rights. Who's against that? Advocacy for women's rights. That sounds beautiful, but that's not the reality of what feminism is, okay? The premise of feminism is saying that women and men are the same. There is no difference. I remember stumbling across this verse of the Quran, this phrase. It says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. The male is not like the female. I remember wondering to myself, Ya Allah, this is your divine book. Why do you have to mention this? It's so obvious male and female are different. Well, you come to Akhir al-Zaman, you see that this is actually these lines between male and female are actually being blurred. This is a massive hurdle for society. It damages society. One of the signs of Akhir al-Zaman is precisely this. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, he said, one of the signs of Akhir al-Zaman is that men will resemble women and women will resemble men. Why did he say that? After all of those list of signs, why does he mention this? Look what's happening in society. When it comes to the harassment of women, you know one of the things that feminism did? It came and it said men and women are equal, so men and women should both be in the military. They should both be in the army. Go and look at the statistics of the number of women whose honor was snatched away from them because of this. This is what feminism did. Okay? Look at the harassment in society. Divorce rates. Why are divorce rates taking place? One of the factors is because both men and women are working. What did feminism do? Feminism came along and said all women should work. It presented the ideal of a career woman. Your only worth in society, dear sisters, is if you have a job, if you earn money. Otherwise, you are worthless. This is what feminism did. And so when men and women are both working, they come home, there's no peace in the house. No peace in the house anymore, right? You go back a generation, you look at the generation before us, there was this traditional understanding that they had where the women would stay at home, they would be the homemakers. And so the home was always a place of sanctuary, peace, tranquility. When the man comes home, he's tired, he's upset, he's had a bad day, but at least the house is peaceful. You see, they had stability. Now feminism has ruined that harmony, and we've ruined it as well by adopting feminist traits. We also think that a woman's worth is in how much money she can earn, right? When it comes to illicit content online, do you really think that that illicit content would exist if it weren't for feminism, right? The explicit, disgusting content which exists online, would it exist? Imam Ali alayhi salam, you know what he says? One of the beautiful hadith. He says, the one who has ghayrah will never do zina. And we'll come back to this concept. It's impossible. It's because of the lack of ghayrah and because of feminism that these things exist, right? Because there's no stability. Premarital relations. Premarital relations have become the norm in society, and marriage is now looked at as the strange thing. You know why? Feminism is that thing which came forward and presented marriage as a burden. It presented marriage as a prison. Right? Because it presented marriage in this way, people thought to themselves, why should I lock myself into a relationship? I might as well go out and have fun. It's much easier. It is feminism which destroyed it. They have a saying in the West, and it says that chivalry is dead. Chivalry is that feeling, you know, a man wants to look after his women. If you see a woman who's standing up pregnant, you're going to stand up for her out of your chivalry. This is a part of ghayrah. You want women to be protected in society. In the West, they say, chivalry is dead. Feminism killed it. Now, feminism, and I want to show you quickly, before we come to the idea of feminism, we're going to cycle back to that. I want to show you how ghayrah was the cure and still is the cure. Look at the amount of women who are harassed. When it comes to female harassment in the West and in other places too, in India, for example, right? When it comes to women being oppressed, you know why women are being harassed? You know why women's honor is being snatched away from them? It's because the society has no ghayrah. Men, a society which has men who have ghayrah will never allow even one woman to be touched or looked at in the wrong way. Ghayrah has vanished. That's why women, and when it comes to the military, if men have enough ghayrah to protect the society, they have that sense of strength, they have that sense of chivalry, then such a thing would never have happened. Divorce rates, why are they happening? Because of this again. If men had had ghayrah, they would have presented themselves first and foremost as the breadwinners. They would have come forward and said, look, my wife, she can work, but it's not the tradition, it's not the culture of Islam. Ghayrah would have protected us from all of those divorce rates and all of those failed relationships that are out there. Illicit content online wouldn't exist if ghayrah existed in the society. Premarital relations, again, would not have existed. Going back to the hadith, Imam Ali alayhi salam said, a man who has ghayrah can never commit adultery. It's impossible. See, dear brothers and sisters, we have to understand ghayrah has vanished to a lesser or greater extent. We need to wake up to this reality, not tomorrow, not the day after, today, now. Now, feminism, coming back to feminism, what has it done? You see, the enemies, often what they do is they present one extreme form of oppression in order to justify another. All right, I'm going to give you an example. For example, they presented the extreme form of oppression which Hitler did to the Jews. Okay, they presented that extreme form of oppression, and today we see that they have now justified the Palestinians being oppressed, right? In the same way, the same Jews who were oppressed in Nazi Germany, when they certainly were oppressed, right? There was anti-Semitism, but that extreme has now turned into another extreme where those very same Jews become the oppressors. Okay, the same thing that they have done. Look at what they did. They presented the extreme oppression of, for example, the oppressive husband. How many times have you seen this in movies? The oppressive husband, he comes home, he's drunk, he pulls out his belt, he beats his wife, he beats the family, he's an oppressive husband. This archetype has been presented throughout mainstream media, in movies, in novels, in cartoons even, right? That extreme form of oppression was presented. Today we have another extreme, which is what? The woman who's the oppressor. She keeps the husband underneath her feet. If the husband shouts, you shout louder. If the husband lights a match, you burn down the house. Right? This is the other form of extreme oppression which we see existing today. I want to present to you now the idea of Margaret Sanger. Some of you may have heard the name. Some of you have actually studied her in school because she's being presented. She is one of the founders, one of the figureheads of feminism, right? And, they'll present her in the most beautiful of ways. They'll say, she was an advocate for human rights. She was an advocate for women's rights. She wanted equality between the genders. Beautiful. And they'll present her as some sort of a hero. What they won't tell you is that she lectured to KKK members who are a right-wing extreme terrorist outfit in America. They won't tell you about that. They won't tell you that these so-called heroes of the West and heroes of feminism are actually part of eugenics. They are inherently racist. Okay? What they won't tell you is that they are responsible for unspeakable numbers of abortions, babies who have been killed in the wombs of their mothers in the name of freedom. They don't present it in that way. Go and look online at what an abortion actually means. You will see the aborted fetuses. It is horrendous. It is horrific. You know how they present it? A woman has the right to her body. She has the freedom of her own. She has the freedom to decide what she does with her own body. That's how they present it. And they make it look like something beautiful. Now, coming back to this idea of the feminists and the enemies presenting an extreme form of oppression in order to justify another extreme, think about this. This same Margaret Sanger, right, who, by the way, who's the founder of Planned Parenthood, which still exists today, Obama, the president of America, ex-president of America, Hillary Clinton have hailed her as a hero, and this organization as a heroic organization. This same Margaret Sanger, she presented a book. What was that book? It was called Motherhood in Bondage. And what it basically did is it presented cases where women were forced into giving birth, forced into having babies. Now, I'm not denying that the West has been oppressive to women. If you go back in the history, there have been cases. But now we have to be clever about this and recognize why they have highlighted that extreme form of oppression. Because today, through presenting that, they have established a new extreme form of oppression. What is that new extreme? It is presented through feminism, and it's this idea that the mother is nothing. The mother is just a slave. The mother is oppressed. The mother has no worth in society. This is what feminism has actually done. Now you go to Islam. What does Islam say about the mother? We've all heard the hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, where he says that Jannah, paradise, the goal of all humanity, is at the feet of the mothers. Now many of us, we actually may have thought that when we hear this, that's just something that Maulanas say in order to appease the women, in order to make women feel good about themselves. We never thought, hold on a second, let's stop a moment. Let's think about this. Maybe this is a divine reality. No, women's status in Islam truly is this great. And this is the reality. Islam is the thing that frees women from bondage, not feminism or capitalism or communism or any of the other communisms that they create. Islam is that thing. Did you know that Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, he actually said, out of the two genders, women are the stronger gender. Women are the stronger gender. This is a divine reality. Do you know, when you go to read the book, the Vista Panjo Saleh, the man of 250 years, Imam Khamenei actually stipulates and he says, when Islam was saved through a woman by the name of Sayyidah Zainab, salamullah alayha. This is the reality. You know, the first martyr of Islam was a woman. The first martyr for the cause of wilayah was a woman by the name of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha. Okay, this is the reality. But what has feminism done? You see, Islam has taught us that women are strong in the traits that Allah has made them strong in. There are things that women can do that men can never do. Become a mother, become a wife, become to raise the next generation is something that only women can do. Men can't do it. What did feminism do? It snatched those very traits that make women strong away from them. And it told them the only way you can be successful, the only way that you can be strong is to compete with men in all the things that they're good at. Women will never be physically as strong as men. It's impossible. Scientifically, it just doesn't make sense. But that's what feminism is telling us to do, okay? Now, this is the reality. Now, the final point that I'd like to raise today in this regard is this, that look, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he said something absolutely beautiful, because look, one of the ways that Ghayrah is actually defined is chivalry. And I like to say divine chivalry. The reason I like this translation the best is because it denotes the idea of being like a knight in shining armor. You notice knights have honor, or at least the concept of a knight has an honor, right? Right? In reality, they don't anymore. If somebody's knighted by the queen, it doesn't mean anything. Horrible people are sometimes knighted by the queen. It doesn't mean anything. But back in the day, even the concept of samurai in Japan, right? You go to their concept of what Ghayrah is. They would have it in such a way that the samurai would sit in one position, right? And the guest would sit with his back to the door. Why? So that when the wife enters the room, the guest wouldn't see her. Right? This is the kind of thing this is dead, dear brothers and sisters. Chivalry is dead. Islam is that thing that can resuscitate it. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Ghayrah is the fruit of courage. And this is what it really comes down to. We need to have courage, dear brothers. I tell the dear brothers especially, dear sisters too, if you want a knight in shining armor, you need to look for those men who have a sense of Ghayrah. And dear brothers, we need to develop this sense of Ghayrah because it is not limited to social affairs. It affects everything. Think about it. Our lands have been occupied. Right? Palestine has been invaded. Those are our sisters and our mothers out there who are being snatched away. Do we not have a sense of Ghayrah in this regard? Masjid al-Aqsa has been occupied by the Zionists. Where is our sense of Ghayrah when it comes to this? Ghayrah has vanished and we need to revive it. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said something absolutely remarkable. And at first glance, you'll think to yourself, what? But just think about it. The Holy Prophet said, I have more Ghayrah than anyone else. The Holy Prophet is saying this, Muhammad, our Prophet is saying this. He has more Ghayrah than anyone else, even more than Prophet Ibrahim, who we mentioned, right? I want to highlight for you what society has done. Okay, what we've really done, and it affects social affairs, political affairs, our individual affairs, because we have to understand feminism is totalitarian in nature. It enters the very private domains of our households. Okay, I want to show you what society has done and what the Shias have done and what so-called Muslims have done. The Prophet is saying he has more Ghayrah than anyone, which means what? If his women are looked at in the wrong way, how does the Holy Prophet feel? Right? Look what we're even doing today. Even today, we are attacking the Ghayrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How? Did you know that there are certain individuals, unfortunately, among the Shias who insult the wife of the Holy Prophet? And they say, Aisha fahisha, which means something terrible, which I don't want to translate because there are many young people who are listening. This is how they attack the wife of the Prophet. And these people claim to love the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Subhanallah, when Imam Ali alayhi salam was in the battlefield and he fought against Aisha, how did he take Aisha away? In the utmost respect, surrounded by women, escorted like a queen. Why? Because he loved the Holy Prophet, because he understood the Ghayrah of the Holy Prophet. But even today, they are attacking the ghayrah of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet asked one thing, the Quran teaches us, لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا مودة في القربى. I ask you for nothing for this except love for the Ahlul Bayt. But how did this ummah treat the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This is the most poignant part which breaks our hearts to really talk about. And now it has been 40 days since we have commemorated the martyrdom of our Mawla Hussein alayhi salam. And so let us remember the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, I ask you for only one thing, and that is that you love my family. How, oh dear brothers and sisters, oh mourners of Hussein, how did they treat this family of Mustafa? My heart immediately goes to Fatima al-Zahra, who would go from door to door asking for support for wilayah, asking for people to support the cause of Imam Ali alayhi salam. When Ali was burying this wife of his, this daughter of Mustafa, they say that he looked towards the heavens and let out a scream towards the night sky when they asked him, Oh Ali, why did you scream? He said, because I discovered at that very moment that her ribs were broken. For I do not wish for any of the other people who are now mahram to hear their voices. Think about the ghayrah of our Mawla Ali. Yet how were these daughters treated in Karbala? How were they treated? Ya Ali. You were not there, Ya Mustafa, you were not there, but Hussein was there. Imam Zayn al-Abidin was there. When the women of the household of Mustafa, their chadars were snatched away, and they were looted, and they were mounted onto camels without saddles. And now I'd like to ask you a question. Oh dear mourners of Hussein, do we think that Hussein was not human and he did not have human emotions? Do we think that Hussein did not have this sense of ghayrah? They say that when Hussein was full of bloody arrows, when he had been cut to pieces, when he was on his final moments and all hopes had moved away from him, they say that the enemies, they started to move towards the tents of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And at that moment, Hussein starts to drag his body towards the tents to protect his women. Oh, my brother Abbas, where are you? The daughters of Mustafa are unguarded. Abbas says, my Mawla, I would defend them, but the enemies have cut off my arms. My Mawla saying, cries out, Oh, Ali Akbar, my son, where are you? Don't let the chadar of Rabab and Layla be snatched. Oh my Father, I wish to help you, but they have broken my body. Oh, Muhammad, where are you, my nephews? Protect the chadar of Zainab. They reply, oh, Zayd, we have already been slain. Hal min nasirin yansurni. It is said that at this moment, Imam Zayn al-Abidin falls from his bed and begins to crawl, trying to help the Imam of his time. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إنا إليه وإنا إليه راجعون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. I'd like us all to raise our hands in dua. Oh Allah, help us to understand the plots of the enemies. Oh Allah, help us to understand what Islam has stipulated. Oh Allah, help us to adopt the commands of Islam, even if we hate them and we don't understand them. Oh Allah, help us to crush our own nafs so that we can accept Islam wholeheartedly. Oh Allah, help us to establish Islam in our families, in our homes, and in society. Oh Allah, help us to recognize the Imam of our time and hasten his appearance. Oh Allah, help us to have that Ghayrah of Abbas. Oh Allah, help us to have that Ghayrah of Hussein. Oh Allah, help us to have the Ghayrah of Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance. Allahumma kun waliyyaka al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Jazakallah, Shaykh. Thank you so much for your eye-opening lecture on the reality of feminism and how Ghayrah is a tool that we can use to combat feminism and the different plagues that feminism presents. This will wrap up our short Arbaeen special. Thank you so much for participating, and inshallah you benefited. Wa alaikum assalam wa